Hey, good morning everyone. It's Charlie Craven with Charlie's Fly Box, and today I'm going to tie for you a fly from a longtime friend of the shop, Phil Iwan-E. And I don't know, Phil called me several months ago and asked if I would do this fly, and then he came in the shop the other day to show me how he ties it. This is his Iwan-E-Dun. Let's make sure we got our focus in there. But he came in to show me how he ties it, and I kid you not, he brought an entire rolling suitcase worth of tying stuff in to show me this one fly, which I guess is maybe one of the things that we love about Phil. Is he, I don't know, he's a little over the top. But at any rate, this is sort of a fidgety little fly, honestly. I've tied half a dozen of them or so, sort of warming up and figuring out exactly how I want to do it. And I've made a few changes to Phil's method. He has a fairly complicated method of splitting the tail on this, and I found a much easier way. So maybe he'll adopt that, or maybe he'll say that is not the way to do it. But hey man, this is the way that I'm going to do it. So we're going to tie a PMD version. Obviously this is a pattern, so you could tie this in a blue-winged olive, a red quill, a green drake, you know, etc., etc. And notably, it is an extended body dry. So the idea of an extended body dry, or what should be, is a fly where you've got a bigger fly on a smaller hook. And what he's done here is he's using a 2488. In this case, this is a size 16. Which is a 2 extra short, 2 extra wide hook. So it's got a big, giant gap on it. So we can get this kind of little delicate fly, you know, a little more length out of it with a small hook. My way of thinking has been always that extended body flies don't make a ton of sense on small hooks because you're already got a small hook in there. But in this case, this does set this fly down a little lower, and a pretty crafty way to go about it. So I'm going to show you how to do this. This is Phil's Iwan-E-Dun. So I'm going to pull this one out. Hey, while I'm at it, I should mention I am tying today on my Dynaking Barracuda, which I've had this vise for 15 years. And the reason I'm tying on this is the guys over at the Mayfly group who purchased Dynaking last year are redesigning. I shouldn't say redesigning. They have, yeah, they've redesigned the jaw, and you can see it's the same shape. This is actually the first set of jaws that they sort of prototype jaws that they got sent out, and they sent them to me just to sort of play with and see how I like them. And I'll tell you, so far, I really like them. I'll tell you more about them as we go, but this jaw is not made the way you'd think it would be made, and it's pretty astonishing. Those guys are doing, gosh, they're doing big things over there, and I realize that it's a little slower than everybody would like, but I promise you when it all comes together, you're going to be pretty impressed. So far, I am also, but the only jaw they had, the first set of jaws that they made, were for the Barracuda, so that is why I'm not using my Pro today. I'm using my Barracuda. And actually it's going to work nicely for this fly because it's going to center everything right in the middle of the screen. So at any rate, I'm going to pull that fly out, and I'm going to put a bare hook back in here. Get him positioned a little more. There we go. So again, a 2488 size 16, and I'm going to start off with some light Cahill colored Veevus 14-aught. And I'm going to start this just up here behind the eye and just make a nice even thread base back to just past the hook point, just barely, maybe just to the hook point. I feel like we lost some focus there. Let's try to get that back together. There we go. Now, so the core of this fly is a piece of 0.013 monofilament, or something thereabouts, which is about, I'm going to guess 10 to 12 pound. No, actually, I think this is 16 pound. 16 pound tippet material, not fluorocarbon, just regular nylon tippet material. And it's 0.013 is the diameter. And what I want to do here is, I've got a few inches of it. I want to take the end, and you can see there's a curve. It always comes off a spool. There's a little bit of a curve. And I always tie a curve up, although, all said and done, it's such a short length, it's not going to have a big curve to it by the time it's all said and done. But I just pinch that with my D-bar pliers just on the very end to kind of flatten out the end of that mono. And then what I'm going to do, let's see if my glue is still wet here. Well, it's not, of course. I'm going to take and just put just a tiny little drop of Superglue down. Put some on my needle, and I'll put that down on the hook. And then I'll take my piece of mono, and I'm going to tie this in right on top. If you don't flatten the end of this, this is going to roll around and fight you for the rest of your days. So you want to make sure that you glue that down. And you can see the curve going up. Granted, on that long piece, it's a bigger curve. We're going to cut this down to about 5 millimeters long on this fly, 5-6 millimeters. So there's not going to be a ton of curve left, but you can accentuate that a little bit more later. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and cut that. And what you're shooting for is about a shank length. And it's shorter than you think, all said and done. Just going to nip that off, so we've got just a short little stub sticking off the back of the hook. Now I'm going to take a couple strands of tailing fibers, and these are PMD colored, yellow colored. You can use white or gray on this as well. But I'm going to take 2 of these, and I'm going to even the tips. And what I want to do is measure these from the hook eye. Really, my tie down is going to be right where my thread's hanging. But what I want to measure the length of the tails from the end of this mono out here. I don't like the tails too long. A lot of guys tie these fairly long, Phil included. I don't like them too long. So I'm going to get that measurement, and then I'm going to anchor those down right on top, wrap back over them right to the base, and you can see those tails will stick out just a bit past the end of that mono, and then I can cut these front ends off. Now Phil has a I keep using the word fidgety. Very fidgety way of tying these tails in and splitting the tails with a tag of thread. Phil leaves a tag and he glues it to the bottom of that piece of mono so that he can later pull it between the 2 tails. And I did it, and it's complicated, I'll tell you. It's honestly, I think more trouble than it's worth for what you end up with. And as we're going to coat this eventual thread body with resin, I'm going to show you a trick to split these 2 tails with resin that goes much more cleanly, much more smoothly. So you can kind of see what I got here. Those tails are just sort of next to, on top of the mono stem. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to adjust this hook just a bit, and this is just to clear a path a little bit more easily. So I'm going to tilt that hook down a bit. Phil actually takes the hook at this point and reverses it so that the hook eye is pointing back toward the device so that he can make these wraps, but I found everybody's got their own way of doing it, and this is going to be mine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this thread and work up this mono. And sometimes when you get to the end, you've got to sort of support it right up to the end. And you can see if you get loose, it'll want to come undone. One of the tricks here is to make sure you've got enough thread coming out of your bobbin to get up and down before you've got to pull on it. So I just went up the end, not quite. I can actually see on the monitor that I didn't get quite to the end, so I'll get that on my next turn. But I'm going to make a couple layers here. I want to build sort of a tapered body here as I do this. So up and down, and then I'm going to do that again. And I'm going to cheat and use the monitor here when I get close to the end to make sure I get right up to the end, like that. You can see I'm just working my way back down. Starting to run out of thread. I'll feed myself a little bit out. Because this mono flexes, you can see in my fingers here as I let go, you can't really pull on your bobbin much. So you've got to be working with a length of thread that you're not drawing from the bobbin. And when I need to feed more, I'll have to manually do it. Here we go. And as you get down closer to the hook, you've got a little more rigidity to that post. This is really a pretty simple way of doing an extended body. You can see I'm just building a little bit of taper here down toward the base, like so. Now let me square this back up in the vise, like that. And you can see we've got a little texture to that. You can sort of curve this up a bit if you need to, bend that a bit. And then I'm going to separate those tails just with my fingertips. Easy for me to say, there we go. Like so. So we've got a nice little split tail there out at the end. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, I like the Bone Dry Plus Solarez. Phil uses regular Bone Dry. The Bone Dry Plus doesn't stink as bad, so I've been using it. And I'm going to take just a little bit of it and put it on my dubbing needle here. And I'm going to coat this body top and bottom, all the sides. I try not to get too much on the hook, but I want to get right up to the end and just coat that body up. And you can see how that adds some shine and translucency to the body. Now here's the trick for splitting the tail, and it's really, especially comparatively, a very simple trick. I'm going to take just a tiny little drop, just barely wetted on my bodkin, and I'm going to put it between the tails. Try not to get it all over the tails, which I succeeded in. So I want to get that drop between the tails, kind of get them positioned where I want them. And then I'll take my light and I'll cook that. Like so. So now our tails are split, and we just did that with resin. Nothing fancy or tricky. If you've got any resin on those tails, you can wipe it off now after you've cooked it. Although they're such a fine fiber, it really doesn't make a huge difference. But you can see what we've done there. I got a little gob down underneath here. That's probably a little more than I needed there, but you get the idea. That's the gist of this fly. The rest of this is sort of a standard parachute. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bump just off the end of that mono stub on the end, and I'm going to use, Phil uses McFlylon, which is absolutely fine to use. I'm going to use some of our polypropylene macrame yarn, and this is in bug wing color, which is sort of a grayish tan. Got maybe I'd say tan cast to it, but really nice for a PMD wing. And I'm going to take this length and I'm going to tie it in at the center of its length with a couple of X-wraps. So 2 go in one way, right at the base of that mono, and then 2 the other way. And I'll come around the hook and I'll stand those 2 up. That's going to become our parachute wing. So I'm going to reach over my vise, come up and come around the base. This is one thing that I've noticed tying more on the rotary vices lately. I've been doing this a lot more lately. One, because I got this set of jaws, but also because I've noticed so many people in my classes are tying on rotary vices now. There are some different maneuvers that you've got to do to sort of make access to get to things that I sort of take for granted on standard vices. And one of which is parachute posts and things like that, where you've got to really reach over the high part of the vice back on the rotary function. So just different, not better, not worse, just different. So what I've just done there is I've made 2 wraps around the base of that post. And now I'm going to pick out this is a Blue Dun Hackle. This one is a barred medium ginger dyed dun. Let's see if I hold that up there. You can see it's got some ginger barring on it. And I'm going to strip the base of this about a half a shank long. Is what I'm shooting for right there. And I'm going to tie this feather in front of the wing to the hook shank with the inside of the feather toward the wing. I'll pull this around. That's actually going to work out really nicely on your side so you can see it. You are seeing the outside of the feather there. So, excuse me, the inside is facing toward the wing. And at this point, I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to post that stem to the wing. And I don't need a ton of hackle on a little delicate dry like this. But I'm going to work up the post and back down again. And you can see you've got to make sure you don't catch that body. And then I'll come around the hook just to lock everything in. Now one thing I want to make sure that I have, as you can see, I've got a little bit of bare stem down here at the base. I want about a half turn of bare stem beyond my tie down point. So now I'm going to take a little bit of matching colored dubbing. You know, in this case, this is sort of a sulphur color. Pale yellow works nicely also, and maybe honestly a combination of the two might be the best way to go about it. I'm going to use Superfine here. Stephen Hankins has got a new sulphur colored beaver dubbing and a PMD colored beaver dubbing that honestly would work great on this, and I've got it at the shop, but I do not have it here at home, so I'm going to use the Superfine. And I'm going to put this on really thin. Just a thin little layer, as tight as I can get it. And I'm going to build my thorax with this dubbing. So I'm going to start just about an eye length behind the hook eye, and I'm going to wrap up to the base of the post. I may not actually have enough dubbing. And then I'm going to come back and overlap just onto the front edge of the body. Gosh, that's pretty darn close. Pretty darn close. I'm going to add just a tiny bit more. Gosh, if you're going to do it, just do it right. So just a tiny bit more dubbing here, just so I can kind of even this out. Now, one thing when you add dubbing, you might as well use this as a learning opportunity. I'm going to unwrap a few strands, or a few turns, so that I can overlap the new dubbing onto the old dubbing and have one continuous strand. So now I can sort of work my way through all this with one strand. So back to the base of the body on either side of the wing. As I start to run out of dubbing, I want to end with my thread going around the base of the wing. In my case, tying left-handed, that's a clockwise turn. If you tie right-handed, you should make a counterclockwise turn. I'm sort of glossing over the parachute portion of this because I've covered it before. The Parachute Adams video here on our YouTube page has got a much more in-depth description of how to do that parachute. So if you want further details, probably check that one out. This monitor is going to be the death of me. I can see those little strands. Can't see them with my eyeball. That's better. Alright, so now I'm going to pick up my hackle feather in my rotary hackle pliers, and I'm going to separate it from the wing. And as I bend this over, now the inside of the feather is facing up. And what I want to do here is I want to wrap this from the top of the post down. So just one turn under the last, and that extended body does get in your way a little bit. So you've got to sort of work up and down here at the back. I want to get 3 to 5 turns. I think that's 4 there. I realize our angle is not great for you guys. Once I've got those 3 or 4 turns and I've wrapped down to the base of the wing, I'm going to reach over the vise again and pick up my bobbin and go clockwise and tie the feather off to the base of the wing. When I finish, once I've got a couple turns on there, that feather is tied off. I can now bring my thread out over the hook eye and drop it down, bring it back up, and now I'm going around the hook again. I don't like to tie off on the post. A lot of guys do. I find it makes more bulk than I really want there. Right now I've got 2 turns of thread and I don't have a big space between the hackle and the dubbing. If I was to whip finish in there, I'd have at least 3 more turns in there, so it makes more bulk than I like. You can see that hackle lays pretty parallel and flat. So I'm going to come in and trim my feather out. Got one weird fiber over here. Get him out of there. Come on. Yeah, looking pretty clean, really. I don't have any problems with that. Then I'm going to come in and whip finish. And I like to work sort of from the bottom up and just sneak that whip finish in behind the eye. You can see that makes a very small little head. Doesn't create a lot of bulk on there. Then I can come in and trim my thread out. I'm going to trim the wing, like I say, about a shank length long. Phil likes to cut it at an angle. A lot of guys like to do this angled cut. I might as well do it. I don't love the angled cut, but rather than bring your scissors in and try to get an angle, if you pull them straight up and just sweep them out forward when you make that cut, you'll end up with a wing that's a little longer in the front and a little shorter in the back. Slightly more reminiscent of a Mayfly wing. And then we can sort of organize our tails again. I banged them up with the thread when I was moving around there. Those are synthetic fibers, so they're really tough and very malleable, and you can move them. That's a great angle right there. You can see a nice wide split there. Not near as complicated as Phil's original method, so I'm going to say that's an improvement. Hopefully Phil likes that. I bet that's going to make his life easier too. Certainly made my life easier, and that's really what this is all about, is making my life easier. So there we go. That's Phil's Iwan-E-Dun. That's the PMD version. Really pretty simple. And honestly, it was kind of fun to kind of learn to do this and sort of develop a technique to make it work for me. Not a bad looking fly. We do sell a lot of these at the shop. Phil is a great guy, very, very jovial, very fun to be around. He comes in the shop, and we always have a good time with him. So it has been my pleasure. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That's Phil Iwan-E-Dun, and I'm Charlie at Charlie Slybox. Thanks for watching, you guys. Take care.